Good afternoon, or yes, I guess it's afternoon everywhere that people are. So, hello everyone. Welcome to the chat today. We're going to be talking about supporting your business customer with the use of social media policy, privacy, and strategies. And we're going to get going in just a second. Just to make sure, if you haven't signed on, as Brian said, please let us know where you are. I think most of you have already done that and told us how many is in the room and how many are with you. So thank you very much. Here we are. We're still getting some people. Great. Thanks for signing in. Okay. Here's, since many of you have been on a chat already, this won't surprise you, but we're going to do a quick introduction of the subject matter experts on social media. You'll recognize them, their faces and their voices, since they're becoming famous in the circles of the Reemployment Connections Institute. Then we'll do an informal discussion. We'll ask a general question that all of the subject matter experts will respond to at the beginning, and we'll then get to your questions. So as soon as we switch the screen here, I get through the introductions, there'll be a panel that you can put questions in, and all of you will see each other's questions, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. We're going to go about 30 to 45 minutes, obviously, so we'll get right to it. Our panel of experts are distinguished, let us say it, at least. Joanna Palladino is the Media Project Manager for New York State Department of Labor. Welcome, Joanna. Michael Ellsworth. Mike is the Program Director, Career One Stop at the Department of Employment and Economic Development, the state of Minnesota. And Darlene Karnapis is Social Media Coordinator for the state of Iowa, Department of Labor. So welcome to all of you. We're so glad to have you with us. Next, I'm going to get right to some questions. I sent to the subject matter experts, the SMEs, a question, or Rick did some time ago, and ask that we begin this chat today by having each of the SMEs give us a little feedback on the question: if you had to distill down for the states the idea of supporting your business customer by using social media, privacy policies, and strategy, how would you help? How could you help us by sharing your top 3 most important lessons about getting social media to work for your state? So if you would just begin with that, and then we'll probably spend a good deal of time, since the states asked for this subject to be on the chat list, about helping the private sector customer build their social media policies as well. But to begin with, let's see if you could, how about we start with out west and Darlene first this time. Would you go, and then Mike, and then Joanna?
Sure.
Are you with? Yeah. Hi, Darlene.
Hello. So a couple of things. When we did our survey of businesses and job seekers, they both said that one of their main concerns was privacy issues. So when you're doing your training, you need to keep that in mind and think about how to train them on best practices, making sure people are locking down their accounts, using secure passwords, changing their passwords frequently, that kind of thing. So that's got to be a key focus of your training. The other thing is social media policies. In my opinion, it's really important for your department to have a social media policy. Make sure everyone has read it. Maybe it's part of your new employee hire that they've all had to read that. Ours is included in our computer use policy. And make sure that you keep it updated. When I got here, we already had a social media policy, but it had some outdated language. And so you need to make sure that you have a procedure to making sure that the language is updated. And then the other thing to go along with that is to use your training to show the businesses some sample social media policies and why it's important to have something in writing. And we've had some cases in Idaho to show that. There was a case of a teacher posting something on her Facebook account, and she was disciplined, but her boyfriend wasn't, and there was no social media policy in that school district. So whether it still happened is another issue, but there isn't a policy to fall back on for that school district. And then from the news world, there have been cases where reporters have left and taken their Twitter followers with them. And if, you get a popular reporter, they can have tons of followers, and the newspaper doesn't want to lose those. So they need to figure out, who owns these and have that in writing. And obviously that's a little different for us, but if you're allowing people to have Twitter accounts with their names representing the department, it's something to think about. And it's something for the businesses to think about. If they have, their marketing person tweeting in their name, what happens if that person leaves? And just make sure those kind of things are clear from the start.
Very good. Thank you, Darlene. Excellent advice, and some thoughts that, points that we may not have thought of or considered. So very good. And then maybe that will stimulate some questions from our audience as well. Mike, you want to take a shot at just the things that are the most important that you've learned about policy?
Sure. As it happens, I just got the preliminary results from the first week of our survey of employers about the subject of talent communities and the proposed talent community that we're planning. And one of the things that we asked was their evaluation of several features that we were considering. And number one, by a large margin, there was, 374 responses here, 357 responses. 98% of them said it was either very important or somewhat important to keep their communications with potential job candidates private. I would say that doesn't surprise me at all. 5 people said it was not important. I'm not sure why. One would expect this type of a response from many of the employers. And this, I think, would extend to the realm of public social media as well. So if you were out there in a LinkedIn group, which is semi-public, or on Facebook, chatting with either job seekers or really pretty much any business topic, privacy and security would be very important, I would think, to everyone. And just I see there's a question coming up about virtual job fairs. So I'm going to give you a couple more results here. We also asked about virtual job fairs as a feature that would be desirable. 38% of them said yes, it would be. Ability to integrate with other social media, and notwithstanding the privacy of one-to-one communications with a job candidate, 43% thought that was important to integrate with other social media, be able to share opportunities on out to social media or have job seekers share opportunities as well. 43% were interested in promotional features such as email marketing and banner ads, and 38% thought it would be very important for a talent community, and I would assume any social media, to provide assistance to job seekers with online help with resumes, interviews, and career assessments. So that's just a little information. This is preliminary. We're going to run the survey probably through the end of the calendar year, and we'll have more responses upcoming. So regarding what the implications are for general policy, I think you need to make it clear when things are private and when things aren't. Darlene, I would just echo everything she said about making sure you have consistent and coherent social media policies that everybody knows and abides by. And then especially since you're acting as part of a government and there is not universal trust in what government does these days, or maybe ever, you maybe need to go the extra mile to make sure that you let employers, businesses know what you're doing with their information, any information you might be collecting, obviously, and these will be probably already stated in your various privacy regs that you might have at your state, but you really need to reinforce all of that to make sure everybody knows what the playing field is and what the rules are.
Good. Great. Thank you, Mike. There are a few things you've talked about just then, but we'll circle back to about how to help employers do that. But before we get down into the weeds a little more, I think I will go ahead and ask Joanna to respond to the general question first so that you all three have a chance to do that, and then we'll come back and get into some more details.
The things that we found so far that are sort of important or something to think about is to really do an analysis of your business customer that you currently have. A lot of you already have business customers, especially if they're using, your labor exchange or your job bank, and so you may want to just take a look at those and see if they already currently have a social media policy for a private, sector institution, or if they don't. We found that some of our larger companies or more progressive organizations already had a social media policy, and those policies, when we talked to those businesses, came from some advice and suggestions from the Society of Human Resource Management and also from the National Labor Board as well, NLRB. So usually if your social media policy that you've created is supported or has pieces that are supported by those two organizations, you're pretty much in good shape to a certain degree. The other part of it is you can't assume that your own OA staff, occupational analysts, or your business services staff understand all the attributes associated with social media use, even when it comes to privacy or when it comes to policies or even implementation. So you definitely want to take a look at, what do your business services staff already currently know, especially the ones that are working directly with your business customer. What do they need to know, and then create a training plan to make sure that they're given the information that they need so that they can work with their business customer. So those are two of the big ones. And then the third big one is you can't assume that a lot of the businesses are using social media. So again, taking a look at what your businesses are currently doing is helpful, and you can just do a basic search and see, what they are using and are not using. And then you may want to, reach out to those business customers and talk to them about, the benefits of using social media in their particular industry. So, for instance, I did an analysis of manufacturing B2B business in the North Country and found that only 3% of those businesses listed through the National Manufacturing Association and also for the New York Manufacturing Association were even listed, were using social media at all. And so if you look and do an analysis of their international competition and see, even national competition, and see that those organizations are using social media, it does make you look at whether or not your business in your state is as competitive as it could be and should be. Though I'm starting to see more B2B businesses, advanced manufacturing businesses, even if they're small to mid-size, starting to use more social media and hiring social media strategists for their companies, so that is good news. But it is fascinating to see that there are a lot of companies and organizations that are not currently using social media at all. Those are sort of the big three.
Great points. Yeah, especially the whole idea of competition and having social media in the business service reps toolkit is something that can be done to expand the economy and the growth of your business sector. Super. Okay, we're getting a couple of questions on, and Gideon, we'll get to you in just a second. I wanted to circle back a little bit about, while we're talking about the business, helping the businesses though, and ask about the training that you do both for your business service reps and, for employers online. Do you have, online or otherwise, do you have sessions sculpted already and in place for your business services staff? It sounds like you all do. And do they do the training for employers, or is it something that you do from your communications office on helping employers get the social media program in place, some good policies and so forth? How about circling back, Darlene, can you take a shot at that?
Well, we haven't done our big training program yet. That isn't going to happen until early next year. We do have some training that is going on, just some minimal training going on in some of our local offices, and also just some stuff through us with the outreach team. But our goal is, when we do our training, that we will have some speakers come in and hopefully an attorney to talk about specifically to businesses, talking about policies and, implications of social media, and not to scare anyone, but to just let them know, what options are out there and the privacy issues and all of that. So that's our goal.
Okay. Great. And Mike or Joanna? Joanna, how about you?
We are, for the most part, our business services staff engage one-on-one with the business and provide advice to them, and also refer them directly to other organizations that really are experts on this. So we may have trainings in local areas and in regions from, chambers of commerce or other organizations that we feel would be a better fit for them, but we do field questions for them. Basically, what we did do is spend a lot of time training our business services staff, though, on the big, what we call it, the big 3 or 4 social media tools, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, for the most part, and also show them how they can use it not only to assist business, but also how they can use it to do some of their own analysis of their local area, and then also how to recruit more business to work with the department. So, for instance, you can do a regional search on LinkedIn, what businesses are coming up that have, LinkedIn profile pages, and do you have an account currently with each and every single one of those businesses in your region in that area. So we used it also to be able to solicit and provide more outreach to additional business customers in the area.
Very good. So you're not doing any training directly with employers. You're letting your business service staff do that, essentially.
Right. Our business service staff do that one-on-one and also refer employers and businesses directly to, third-party organizations that provide free training,
Okay.
Different business associations.
Great. Thanks. Mike, anything you want to add about the approach to helping business to get trained on using social media?
It's going to be similar to what Joanna has described, using the business service reps. It's a good reason for them to go on out and visit anyway. We do have the job seeker-oriented training, and we would be able to modify that for the employer. And obviously, we're going to be training, if we do go forward with creating a talent community, we'll be training specifically on how to use that talent community as well.
Yeah, there was one of the menu of courses or modules in Minnesota, Mike, was creating an online brand. Is that for employers or businesses, or is that for something for staff?
It's right now kind of oriented towards the job seeker, but with just a very few slide changes, it's appropriate for really anybody online, because the business obviously needs to think about their business's brand online and how you represent that. But also, as I've said before, you're interacting as a person online, and you need to think about how you're coming off as well. Great.
Thank you. Okay. So I think we, maybe move on to some of the questions. Gideon has want to ask about a little more information on the virtual job fair platforms. And is it something you would talk about to Joanna, about asking how the outcomes have compared to the bricks and mortar job fairs and so forth? Have you? Can you go into a little more detail about your approach to doing the virtual job fairs and the results?
Sure. We haven't launched the statewide one yet. We're still trying to purchase our software due to our purchasing protocols in the state. But we did research quite a bit, Gideon, about what we were looking for. Do we want something more text-based and simple? Do we want something with avatars and more 3D and more virtual reality? What would our job seekers like? What would our business like? We do have a couple workforce investment areas that have already done a number of virtual job fairs, and what they found was the demand was still there, that businesses did love to use them. Some still like the face-to-face ones, but we don't want to do it as a replacement for the face-to-face job fairs. We're going to be doing it as a supplement too. And so based on just surveying businesses at our face-to-face job fairs, there was an interest and a demand for this. So when we looked at what businesses had responded to our survey about whether or not they wanted to attend, the majority of which, were high-skilled industries, you could say. And so based on sort of profiling the business, and profiling our customers to a certain degree and looking at, their end user experience, we decided to go with something a little bit, more 3D and virtual that would, is mobile friendly as well, but that, has the little avatars and can be pretty engaging with, interviewers who are, with business who are interviewing. So we're going to take a look at that and see. But the one thing that we do know already from the get-go, the kind of data and information that we can gather from a virtual job fair versus the type of data and information that we can gather from a face-to-face one is far more extensive. And so we can do better research based on, how many in-person interviews were done, how many people visited each booth. That was kind of information and data that we were struggling to collect at some of the live events that we are having. So just from that piece of it, we find going virtual might be helpful, especially as a supplemental. And we think that our customers and business customers and job-seeking customers will like the more modern look as a platform rather than just the basic text platform. But that's projection at this point, but we'll let you know as we move forward.
Thanks, Joanna. I hope that gets to your question, Gideon. If you have any follow-ups, if you'd like to pop them in there, we'll do that. And we'll also open the phone lines a little later, so you'll have a chance to speak.
Hey, this is Mike. I wanted to share some stats from our survey that are somewhat relevant. Among those not currently using a talent community, 29% were interested in virtual job fairs. Of those who are already using a talent community, only 17% are using a virtual job fair. That was a very low number. That's only 6 people. And 32% had interest in doing that in the future. That was 12 people. Of interest, those not using a talent community ranked the ability to interview via video, so one-on-one kind of video interviewing. 37%, that was one of the highest responses to our feature set. Whereas those using a talent community said 14%, and ability to interview among those who aren't currently using it was 8%. But those are low numbers so on the already using front. So there's kind of mixed interest out there. Those who currently are using talent communities perhaps don't think of that as a feature, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like the interest is not that great. Is what I'm hearing about from your users. They're more interested in the talent banks, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
So I know you just gotten these, but based on what you just went over with us, what do you foresee in terms of your follow-up to this in terms of virtual job fairs? Would you be pursuing that, do you think? Or just stick with the talent?
This is all preliminary data, and the interest, 29% of those who are considering a talent community is not that bad, considering we gave them a choice of 4 out of about 10 features to pick from.
Yeah.
We're going to wait, obviously, to make the decision, but it's just an interesting data point at this point.
Okay. Thank you. Gideon has a question, too, and I'm going to move on to that because we're about halfway through our time allotted today, about, passing all directives and communications through the governor's office. Can you do that with an event like a job fair? Are you even getting approval before or after? And a follow-on question is really, we're talking about all directives going through the governor's office. I think that was New York, Joanna. Can you speak up how you're able to be nimble and interactive with social media users, both job seekers and employers, given this process? If you're at an event like a job fair, are you having to get real-time approval or in advance, or how does that work?
I guess I should be a little bit more clear. When it comes to sort of large press releases or large initiatives that we're using social media to promote and publicize, a lot of that goes to the second floor, and usually the governor's office takes the lead on that, announces, and then obviously we use social media to then informed through our influencers. When it comes to, let's say, responding directly to either a business or a job seeker on Facebook, those types of responses don't have to go through the second floor. That is done, real time by our communications staff right there and then. When it comes to events such as, the live job fair, we usually just get quote-unquote approval, ahead of time. Let the governor's chief information, officer, as well as their head, public information officer, let them know that this is sort of what we, are intending to do. Is there any, concern or a problem or anything that, they're concerned about? And there usually isn't. There isn't a problem. So we are nimble, we're quick, and we can live tweet those events without, a problem usually. Because we vet our businesses who are at our live job fairs prior, any concerns that they would have about, a particular business getting, FaceTime is alleviated in advance. So all those businesses are vetted prior to even attending one of our job fairs.
Very good. Thank you for that. Anything you'd like to add, Darlene or Mike, related to approval, issues and, being out there with the job fair kind of on your own after you've got approval?
It's a completely different situation here. We don't run through the governor except for, really big news. But for these kind of things, we would just make the decision here. We wanted to go out to the job fair and take care of it.
So it's within the scope of what you do day-to-day business is what you're essentially.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's the same in Minnesota. Our communications people are able to make those types of decisions.
Great. Thank you both. I thank you, Jen, for the information you're posting. I think you've all seen your screen that there are additional resources about virtual job fairs, and Jen is promising to get you even more. Super. I'm going to ask, unless we have any other questions, I wanted to ask a question about if pilot states had any local areas who have maybe had a policy of no social media in their resource rooms or job centers, and or they put a block on social media sites for some of their workforce staff. Have you encountered that, and how have you dealt with it in terms of the state policy being open and something more restrictive at a local level? How about you, Darlene? Anything up there like that? I think you said you have 26 areas, and any of those resisting?
No. I think, people maybe not understand social media as well as they need to or would like to, but, and I think there was some concern from some of the managers maybe about how much time it might take for the outreach team, but since we've established a team, I don't think there have been any issues. And everyone, to the best of my knowledge and Sarah's knowledge, can get to any site. It's just they have to sign on first. And I will say that we are very lucky because I have friends who are PIOs in other state agencies here in Idaho, and they have trouble getting, even if that is their job, the IT staff has locked it down so hard that they have trouble posting to their own Facebook account and that kind of thing. So the department has been really good here about that.
Well, let me ask a follow-up to that. That's very interesting, and it probably isn't just luck. Is it something that you can point to that says this is why we have this expert space that other agencies don't? Is it your leadership? What?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Georgia Smith, who is our Deputy Director of Communications and Research, has been interested in social media long before I came on board, so she had already established all of that and, communicates back with the executive staff what's going on. And the previous director was very interested in what we were doing. So, yeah, I think there's been buy-in from the top, which is important.
Very good. How about in the other two states? Thank you, Darlene. In the other two states, Mike, do you have any resistance at the local level that you had to deal with?
Well, when we started the project a couple years ago, there were some holdout areas that were concerned about, you know, misuse of scarce resource room time. But over the last couple of years, we don't really hear too much about that because more and more of them are becoming more aware of the role social media can play in finding a job.
Okay. Very good. And before I ask Joanne, I wanted to remind everyone you still have a question box, the main chat box open. If you have any other questions, you put them in there now. And well, I'll go on then and ask you, Joanna, how or if or how you've had any resistance at the local level to the social media policies.
Yes, it's a bit of a challenge. So we have 96 different career centers across the state. For the most part, there's functional alignment in each and every single one of them. So there's a State Department of Labor staff as well as, you know, county employment and training, and also one-stop operators who may be partner staff. And so we're pretty lucky in the sense that the resource room computers are funded primarily out of New York State Department of Labor funds. And so we have executive staff who understand the value of social media for the job search and for reemployment. And so based on support from the executive staff, our policy in the department is that those computers should be open and available to customers when it comes to using social media for the job search. And any DOL employees that are in a career center who are working the front line with customers should also have access at least to the big three. So you're talking, you know, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, et cetera. There are a couple, sites because of our, our information security folks that we can't open up like Tumblr, but for the most part, every Department of Labor staff person in a career center across the state has that available. When it comes to social media use in the resource room computers, we have a computer policy for customers that it doesn't matter whether it's social media or whether it's, you know, any website, and the computer policy uses, you know, you have to be using the computer for job search. So, you know, if somebody's on Facebook just for fun, obviously, it's not, you know, going to meet that standard. So you don't need a special social media policy for the resource room if you're actually, you know, implementing your current computer usage policy for job seekers in the resource room as well. Now, some of the county employment and training staff, as well as some of the maybe not-for-profit or partner staff who are also located at some of these career centers, are using different computers. And their computers are under different servers, and they're paid for and supported by, you know, the county, you know, technology staff. Those folks in some of our areas do have limited access to social media based on their county social media policy and based on, you know, what their technology folks will allow. And so we've struggled a little bit in certain areas with that. And the only thing that we can do is, you know, talk about what we're doing on a state level, talk about the value, and provide the business case. And then often what we've also done is, you know, sort of provided the business case as well to, you know, some of the county folks so that they can, you know, meet with their technology folks to see if they can open those up. And we've also, you know, shared what we're doing with our WIB directors, because we have bi-weekly WIB director calls, letting them know the value of this and why it should be, you know, made available. So we can't force local areas to do it, but we can encourage them by leading, you know, by example, and also by showing, you know, the value of it and giving them the business case.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm sure the number of local areas you have that there's going to be all flavors of acceptance or non-acceptance. So thanks very much, Joanna. Before I move toward the end and we open up the phone line so that anyone can ask any final questions, I want to check about how did your state develop your social media policies? Did you use cross-organizational teams or some other approach? And by the way, can we get a copy of your social media policies and or a link so that we could put them up there in case people want to look at them? How about you, Mike? How did you go about, you know, setting up the policy? Did you start at home and then go out, or put a cross-agency team together first? How did that work?
Well, our policy is for our agency only. There was a a policy out of our administrative people several years ago that was quite restrictive, but the agency I work for, the Employment and Economic Development Agency, the communications folks and the HR folks collaborated on it, and actually our team was barely involved in it, basically as a reviewer, and I actually love what they came up with. It was very very well thought out, I thought. It covered all the bases. It basically referenced our existing communications policy in a lot of ways. So that it was done basically between the commissioner's office and those two other entities, the communications and HR folks. Okay. And I'm sorry to say it has not been officially approved, but I suppose I can release a draft for people to take a look at.
Okay, that'd be great. Joanna? I don't know that we've talked about how you started with putting the policy together. Did you have to go to other agencies, or were you able to do it inside the Department of Labor? How did that work?
Sure. We already had a draft policy that had been floating around for a number of years, so it was pretty outdated. So what we did was we created a work group of individuals across different functions in the agency, ranging from our UI folks, our unemployment insurance folks, our workforce folks, our communications department, our IT department, our information security office. And then what we did was we looked at the draft policy that was currently there. We also looked at the New York State agency policy that was through our Office of Information Technology Services. We also had gathered a number of other policies from state and federal organizations that we thought might be a nice template. And then we met and sort of went over what we wanted to do an update for the original draft that we had. So we did that, updated the draft, and just like Mike, we have a great informal policy that is still floating around that hasn't been formalized yet, but it was done through, cross-functional approach. It did go through our internal clearance process, which means it goes through practically every division head, ranging from finance to our counsel's office. So it's gone through all of that, and not quite sure why it's kind of stuck in the agency, but we're operating under that policy right now.
Okay, very good. And thank you, Joanna. That's interesting that the policies remain in draft for long periods of time, not only at state level, but other levels, I'm sure. Darlene, anything to add there? How in your state, is it cross-agency or was it from within, homegrown?
It was done before I got here, but it was homegrown. It was done by the executive staff. And then when I got here, I made some suggestions to revise and update language, and that went back through executive staff for their approval. And then once that was all approved, it was put out for all the department staff to read. So it's not in draft form. It's available for everyone.
Right. Okay. Very good. Thank you, Brian, for typing up or putting the link to the resources for social media policies off the RC website. All of you can see those. There are a couple of states there, and there's also one from a local area, Workforce Central Florida, which is has some information about helping employers build a policy as well. So if you haven't looked, you may want to look at that. Ryan, I think we're coming up on the end here. I'd like to take a minute and open the lines in case anyone has any last-minute questions they'd like to direct to our terrific SMEs. And
the conference is now in talk mode.
So I think that means they're open. Your lines are open. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask to the SMEs over the phone, we can do that for a couple of minutes here. All right. Let's see. With that, I know, Brian, we are about ready to wrap it up, and I want to personally thank the SMEs for, again, being terrific and sharing with us their experience and background and wealth of knowledge on the topic. I Also want to ask Jen if she has anything she'd like to say at closeout. And I think, Brian, you're going to ask participants to spend 1 more minute online and give us a little feedback on the chat today, and I would encourage all of you to do that. And to you participants, please accept my thanks for being with us today. I'm excited that you're sending in questions and working on your policies, and I know if you have any other questions, we're always ready to try to take them either off of Ask the Expert online, or you can write to any of us here at Mayor or ETA. With that, Brian, I'm going to ask Jen, I'm going to ask, do you have any questions or comments before we go?
No, thank you for joining us today. I just wanted to say that there is a social media guide that's in draft form that's on the Reemployment Connections website. It has a lot of information about starting programs, starting policies, about the different tools that you can use. It's still in draft form, but we have a lot of information from other states that aren't participating here that might be of use to you. So take a look at it. Later in the future, we're going to be turning that into a wiki-like page so that states can update their own information so it won't be stale. But right now, we just have the draft guide. But take a look at it, and you might find some great information in there. So thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you in a little while.